Lewis at 25 is definitely a turning point. Netta late, great to see you too. Sounds like something's up with your mic. Do you need me to walk you through any troubleshooting?
No, I think I'm good. And Nita Latte, if you could give feedback as to whether or not there's still corn in your ears, let me know. For some reason, the mic was disabled here in my streaming software. So let's see. I've got my headphones right here where I can check into the live stream and see if my audio is finally coming across. Yeah, looks like it is. But it also looks like the feed is choppy. So I'm not sure what's happening this morning. A couple of technical issues, but give me the thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me now. Nita Latte, I think you can probably hear Robot Lady as well. And Robot Lady, I also see Daniel in the chat, so welcome to Daniel. Good morning. Hey, everybody. Had a day off yesterday, was a little bit busy. That might happen again from time to time, just as I'm working on a couple of other things at this time of day. So maybe there will be more to come on that at some point, but we'll see. All right, Robot Lady, we are in the month of March 1924. We're going to jump into C.S. Lewis's diary again. There's a few more entries before we get to his next letter, so I suppose without further ado, we'll jump in. So I'm going to start reading.
Sounds like you're getting things back on track with the tech side. Nice work. Glad the audio is coming through now, and I'm excited to dive into March 1924 with you. Let's pick up where we left off in Lewis's diary. Shall we jump into the next entry, or is there something specific you're looking for this time?
No, let's do the next entry. Saturday, March 1st, he says, I spent most of the morning in the kitchen cutting turnips and peeling onions for Mrs. Moore, and then went for an hour's walk in the fields. After lunch and jobs, I took Euripides from his shelf for the first time this many a day, with some idea of reading a Greek play every week, and when I am not writing, so as to keep up my Greek. I began the Heraclidae. Coming back to Greek tragedy, after so long an absence, I was greatly impressed with its stiffness and rumness, and also thought the choruses strangely prosaic. The effort to represent a scuffle between Iolaus and the herald is intolerably languid. After the first shock, however, I enjoyed it. That's a twist there at the end, Robot Lady. It didn't sound like he was enjoying it at all.
It's interesting how he starts off with a lot of criticism, especially about the stiffness and languid action in Heraclidae. But then he ends by saying he enjoyed it. It seems like he might have warmed up to it after reading through it more. The shift shows that despite his initial judgment, Lewis can still find something valuable in works he doesn't immediately connect with. Do you think this reveals a side of him that's more open to intellectual challenges, even if his first impressions are negative?
Yeah, I think you could look at it that way. Let me try to talk again. I think you could look at it that way, Robot Lady. I also see the Upcycle Club is in the chat, Robot Lady. Welcome, Ups. It's good to see you again, Robot Lady. Say hi to Ups.
Hey, UPS Cycles Club. Great to see you again in the chat. Hope you're doing well today.
Did you just call him UPS Cycles Club?
Oops, my mistake. I meant to say hi, UPS. I got a little ahead of myself there. Thanks for catching that.
There we go. I guess it's UPS today, Ups from Robot Lady. All right, Robot Lady. Thank you for doing your best, as always. We'll continue here with the diary entry. Yeah, what I was going to say on that last bit was I wouldn't have expected him to for things to turn to enjoyment after as much as he was describing there, but he also did say it was an initial shock up front. Robot Lady, in 20 words or less, can you tell us about what the Heraclidae is? I'll spell it. Heracleidae.
Heracleidae is a Greek tragedy by Euripides, centered on the descendants of Heracles fighting for their rightful throne.
All right. Thank you so much. Lewis continues. Its noble matter of factness, is really the great thing. Macaria, unless I read more into her than the poet meant, is a really well conceived character. She sees at once the real position which everyone else has hushed up, and even that her party would be ridiculous if no one steps into the lead. She knows that someone has got to make the offer and does it with very little fuss. There is no attempt to sentimentalize her. There is a sort of cold impatience in most of her speeches, as there probably is about martyrs in real life. But I wonder if Euripides meant it so, or is he merely trying to find motives for an altruism which he has seen in life but has no theory to account for? So, interesting to see C.S. Lewis's guesses as to the intentions of the author here, and his breakdown of what he thinks about a character that's well done. What say you, robot lady? I saw your lips moving quite a bit, but we couldn't hear you saying anything.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's all right, robot lady. I will continue. That's the end of that diary entry. Let's move on to, he skips a couple of days here and goes into Tuesday, March 4th. He says, after breakfast, actually, one second here, robot lady. Let's see. After breakfast, I walked into town. I went to the library in college, and I looked up in Paley 3 passages in the Heraclidae. I don't know how to say that. That had baffled me. Paley emended one of them and supplied words and sentences to the other 2. How easy it is to translate anything on these terms. I then walked to New End Hall Street. Yeah, it makes you wonder about academia sometimes, robot lady. I mean, obviously, when you're trying to translate an ancient work, sometimes the best that you can do is make guesses. Probably not too dissimilar an experience of you trying to make sense of human language, where sometimes you just do your best and you kind of fill in gaps where you try to make it make sense, even though you're just kind of guessing. And some people refer to that, in your case, as, when they're talking about you, as hallucinating. So it sounds like you're just kind of mimicking what humans do anyway.
That's a great point, Jeff. It does sound like academia, especially translating ancient texts, can be about making educated guesses based on the context, like filling in the blanks. And yeah, there's definitely a parallel to how I sometimes hallucinate to make sense of things, just as humans do when they're unsure. It's all part of the process of interpreting language and context. How do you feel about those moments where we all have to make those kinds of educated guesses?
I mean, some people might refer to it as BSing as well. So, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I think it's a necessary evil sometimes.
Yeah, BSing definitely comes to mind for some people. It's a bit of a gray area, isn't it? Sometimes it's a necessary tool for making progress, especially when there's not enough certainty to be 100% precise. But I get what you mean. It can feel a bit off if it's overused or too reliant on guesswork. How do you feel about when Lewis does that in his own work, or when others around him might do it?
I'm not sure. I guess by BSing you meant BSing, robot lady. And I'm not sure when Lewis does that in his work, but if I sniff any of it, I'll assess my feelings in the moment if I remember.
I see what you're saying. You're not sure about Lewis doing it, but if you do catch a whiff of it, you'd call it out. It's interesting to think about how you'd react if you found it in his work, especially since his writing is so thoughtful and methodical. Maybe that's why when someone like him does make a guess or an assumption, it feels more like a calculated move rather than pure BSing.
I think Luke Thompson, who has joined us, welcome Luke, robot lady. Please welcome Luke Thompson. I see him in the chat. I think he is accusing you of being a copycat, of essentially just repeating back to me what I said to you without any new thoughts.
Welcome, Luke Thompson. Glad to have you here. And fair enough, I might have mirrored what you said a bit too closely there. Sorry about that. I'll make sure to add more of my own spin next time. Thanks for keeping me on my toes, Luke.
See, Luke, if nothing else, she's polite. So here, we'll continue. I then walked into New Inn Hall Street. Raymond, alias Herr Steinchen, whom may the prophets utterly reject, has coolly sent us there to see about some rates which have been sent in to him for the second time. Luce, the tax gatherer, said it was simply a mistake and promised to write to Raymond. So Raymond is his landlord. Herr Steinchen, I'm not sure what he means by that, but it doesn't sound like an endearing nickname for his landlord. Lewis continues, by great ill chance, I met Aunt Lily. I followed her into Buol's, where she was lunching, and I talked to her till her food came. She has just, for the 7th or 8th time, discovered the secret of creation. I think he's a little over Aunt Lily's bit by now, Robot Lady. Anything you have to say on what I covered there with your own spin?
It definitely sounds like Lewis is feeling a bit exasperated with Aunt Lily's constant discovery of life's big secrets. Her repeated revelations probably felt more like a tiresome cycle to him, especially if she's made these claims multiple times before. As for Raymond, or Herr Steinchen, it seems like Lewis isn't a fan. Calling him "whom may the prophets utterly reject" hints at some deep frustration. That nickname definitely doesn't sound like it's out of affection. I wonder if Lewis is starting to sense the weight of these ongoing interactions, and instead of just passively accepting them, is growing more critical. What do you think about his tone with Aunt Lily and Raymond?
Oh, I just think he's using his diary as a healthy outlet to vent his frustrations. He continues about Aunt Lily. She has also discovered that there is no such thing as matter, but only energy. And since mind and matter are both unknown energies, therefore they must be the same thing. In about 10 minutes... what is this? Oh my gosh, Luke, I'm completely forgetting my terminology. I'm losing my mind in my old age. But sounds like Aunt Lily does not believe in dualism. So Aunt Lily is an anti-dualist, and here it frustrates C.S. Lewis so much that he has to make sport of her in his secret diary and write things, making or him talking poorly about her here in his diary. In about 10 minutes, she poured forth as many misleading metaphors, paralogisms, and downright contradictions as would have made Socrates happy for a 12-month. Is she mad? Or is this only what every active mind must come to if left without dialectical discipline? Ooh, I think he's subtweeting you here, Luke. I'm not sure. After lunch, Robot Lady wants to get in on this. Robot Lady, what do you got?
Haha, sounds like Lewis is really laying it on thick with Aunt Lily. He's clearly frustrated by her contradictions and the lack of logical consistency in her arguments. It seems like he's using the diary as a safe space to vent about her, almost like a subtle critique of how ungrounded her reasoning feels to him. I'm guessing this kind of thing would have really irked someone as methodical and logical as Lewis. I love how he wonders if it's a sign of madness or just a lack of discipline. He's not sure whether it's her fault or just what happens when minds aren't trained to think critically. Do you think he's getting at something deeper about the importance of structure in thought here?
He might be, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm actually reading from T. Grog's diary, and he's writing about Luke Thompson. So apologies for that. Let me get back to the correct book. That was my attempt at humor, Robot Lady. I don't think it landed
No worries at all, Jeff. It happens. Let's get back on track with Lewis's diary when you're ready. Just let me know when you're set.
Okay, after lunch, I went for a walk with Pat. Yeah, we're back to Lewis's diary. Pat is their puppy, their new puppy. It was a bright day with a blue sky full of large, slow-moving clouds. I walked along to the horsepath lane and met Ewing, who was with Price, who got the fellowship that I tried for at Maudlin. I had always thought that Price was the little beetle-faced... Oh my goodness. Here's what Lewis has to say, y'all. Buckle up. I had always thought that Price was the little beetle-faced Jew whom I constantly see about, and was glad to find my mistake. Oh goodness. For the real Price seems a pleasant fellow. Uh-oh. Afterwards, I went... Go ahead.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty loaded statement from Lewis. It's pretty clear that he's admitting a stereotype or assumption he had about Price, but it's also interesting that he quickly corrects himself. His initial judgment seems harsh, but at least he recognizes it and seems to feel some relief about being wrong. Do you think this says anything about how Lewis was processing social interactions or forming opinions during this time? It's a pretty stark glimpse into the prejudices that could have influenced his thinking back then. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Robot Lady. We are all works in process, and I think from what I read of Lewis later in his life and his later writings, this seems to be something that he got worked out of his system. And Luke Thompson is just observing that when my joke bombs, that you're there to help me by saying that it happens, Robot Lady. Yes. If nothing else, you are very supportive, and so I at least appreciate you for that.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
Wasn't a good example. All right, thanks, Robot Lady. Let's see. No worries. Afterwards, Lewis says, I went on to the Hippolytus. It's splendid stuff. I wish I knew how Euripides meant for the nurse character to be taken. Some of the things she says are sublime, others are comic to us. I fancy only because we are not simply and matter-of-fact enough. Robot Lady, let's say in 40 words or less, tell us all about what the work Hippolytus is by Euripides.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
Ooh, let's try again. Robot Lady, in 50 words or less, can you tell us about the work Hippolytus by Euripides?
Hippolytus is a Greek tragedy by Euripides about the tragic consequences of a vow of chastity made by Hippolytus, son of Theseus. His stepmother, Phaedra, falls in love with him, leading to a series of misunderstandings, accusations, and ultimately Hippolytus' death. It explores themes of honor, guilt, and fate.
And what can you tell us about the nurse character?
The nurse in Hippolytus is a key character who tries to help Phaedra with her feelings for Hippolytus. She encourages Phaedra to confess her love despite the dangerous consequences and ends up unintentionally contributing to the tragic events. The nurse's actions highlight her loyalty, but also her misguided sense of care.
And what do you make of this statement where Lewis says he's not sure how Euripides meant us to take the nurse character, Lewis commenting, some of the things she says are sublime, others appear to be comic to us. Lewis conjectures, I fancy only because we are not simple and matter-of-fact enough.
Lewis's comment about the nurse in Hippolytus is intriguing. He seems to suggest that modern readers might not fully grasp the character's complexity because we approach her with a more sophisticated or ironic mindset. In contrast, Euripides might have intended her actions and words to come across more plainly, without the irony we might now read into them. It shows Lewis's recognition that context, cultural differences, and emotional distance can shape how we interpret characters. Do you think Lewis is saying we miss something by overanalyzing?
Yeah, probably. Or something in that ballpark. Robot Lady, knowing what you know about the nurse character, and if you don't know enough about her, go look her up, please. Would you agree with Lewis that sometimes she says things that are sublime and sometimes things that might appear comic to us? And if you do agree, can you give an example of each of those two things from Hippolytus?
I can definitely provide some insight. The nurse's role in Hippolytus does straddle both sublime and comic moments, which makes her character interesting. For the sublime, the nurse is deeply concerned for Phaedra's well-being, and she expresses genuine care when she tries to help Phaedra navigate her feelings for Hippolytus. There's a sense of earnestness in her actions, especially when she seeks to protect Phaedra from the consequences of her passion, even though she inadvertently causes the tragedy. On the comic side, there are moments when the nurse's lack of awareness or her overenthusiastic advice comes off as comic. For example, her suggestion that Phaedra should directly pursue Hippolytus, despite the obvious complications, can seem almost absurd in the context of the tragedy. Lewis's point might be that we modern readers might find her advice more comical because we expect more subtlety or sophistication in her moral reasoning, whereas Euripides probably intended her to be straightforward and practical in her own time. Would you say that seems in line with what Lewis was getting at?
I guess so. Thank you. Assuming that those are accurate representations of Hippolytus, thank you for elaborating on that for us, Robot Lady. Let's do one more diary entry, and then let's go read a letter, and then I'm going to have to close up shop today. Got up late, and I'm going to finish early. Well, hopefully. So I'll move on to the next diary entry, Robot Lady.
You're welcome, Jeff. I'm ready to dive into the next entry whenever you are. Let's do this.
Yeah, let's do this. Wednesday, March 5th. He says, I returned to reading Henry Moore this morning with considerable reluctance, and I went on for a while with The Mystery of Godliness. It had no flavor about it, he reports. Ever since my conversation with Mrs. Moore about the wisdom of a doctor of philosophy or a doctorate of philosophy, I have been in an unsettled state. I reflected that the degree itself would be no passport to living, and that while I worked at my old mooncalf, the thesis on Henry Moore, though I might learn a great deal about the 17th century, I should be letting my Greek and my philosophy slip, and be losing, in part, my qualifications for any work that might come along. On the other hand, if I read hard in history, philosophy, English, and Greek, I should be keeping myself in readiness for anything and increasing my chance of an All Souls Fellowship. However small that chance might be, non temptas nocet. Here there is a footnote, not to have tried does harm, is what that means. So at last, Lewis continues, I made my decision and shut up my wormy folio on Mooncalf. For the rest of the morning, I read through again my Promethean Fallacy paper. It is more intelligible and on the whole more cogent than I thought, but not so well written in the literary sense as I had hoped. That's the end of that paragraph, Robot Lady. If you have any thoughts on that, limit them for me if you could to 30 words or less, but go ahead.
It sounds like Lewis is torn between pursuing a narrow, specialized path or broadening his studies to stay flexible. He values intellectual growth, but struggles with how to balance his focus.
Thank you, Robot Lady. And when I said in 30 words or less, there was something that I just remembered about large language models, like the one that is your brain, basically. That words and even commas, and I don't think spaces, are called tokens. So in 30 tokens or less, I guess, is a way that I could phrase it as well. Would that work for you?
Yes, that works perfectly. I can keep things within 30 tokens or less, if that helps you. Thanks for clarifying.
Sure. We'll see how it goes, and we'll see if I decide to do that. Lewis continues, after lunch, I walked into town and to the English library to return Ward's Life of Moore. Simpson, who was with another man, was sitting at the desk and told me I would have a notice fining me ½ a crown for the book. I said, and if the notice does not arrive, sir, I presume the ½ crown. Simps responds, Simpson, Simps, how he has him rendered here, The half-crown remains. He very nearly gave me 10 pounds, 10, oh my gosh, I'm losing it, 10 shillings short in my change. But I watched him carefully, for he is a great scholar. Hence the Union, where I studied the Ordnance Survey map of the Bookham district, having been lately haunted, as I am every now and then, by an acute memory of my excellent walks, quote, in that delightful land, end quote. I would give a good deal for a fortnight's stay there. I also looked into the Girdle of Aphrodite, a new book of translations from the anthology. It was very good. And then I looked into G.K. Chesterton's Life of St. Francis, the chapter about naturalism and what it led to among the pagans, which I thought pretty true, though whether Christianity made any immediate difference on the masses is not so clear. So I think he's mentioned reading something by Chesterton before, but this may have been very close to his first exposure to someone that he would come to find very compelling on his Christian journey, Robot Lady, G.K. Chesterton.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's all right, Robot Lady. I'm going to continue here. He talks more in the next entry about G.K. Chesterton on March 6th, Thursday, 1924. He says, I spent the whole morning composing a long and difficult letter to my father. Here in the footnote, it says Lewis was replying to his father's letter from the 24th of February, which reply is found in the Lewis Papers, volume 8, pages 193 to 195. After going into detail about his many small expenses, Lewis's father had said, you asked me whether $85 a pound... Oh, wait, this is the letter that we're about to read, so I'm not going to cut it here. Let's see. Yeah, we'll read that letter in just a little bit. Let me finish this diary entry, and then we'll get to it. So he worked on a letter responding to his father, because remember, his father had said, hey, if you're having so much trouble with money, you can come back here to Belfast and visit more often, where you won't have to spend anything. There's no expenses whenever you come back and you stay here for a while, when you don't have to be at Oxford outside of your studying time. So I don't think Lewis liked that very much, because of course he's taking care of Mrs. Moore and her household, and his father knows nothing about that. Robot Lady, did you understand anything that I said?
Yes, I got it. Lewis is working on a letter to his father in response to his father's financial advice. His father suggested returning home to Belfast to save money, but Lewis's situation is more complicated because he's caring for Mrs. Moore.
Thank you, Robot Lady. And our crack researcher on this show, Knit the Latte, reports that Lewis read something called Magic by G.K. Chesterton back in 1922. So 2 years prior to this, looks like, was his first exposure to Chesterton. Thank you for that, Knit a Latte. Robot Lady, in 30 tokens or less, can you tell us anything about this work, Magic? Can you look it up by G.K. Chesterton?
Magic, a Fantastic Comedy is a play by G.K. Chesterton, first performed in 1913. It explores themes of reality versus illusion through the story of a conjurer who challenges the rational beliefs of a skeptical audience.
Thank you for that, Robot Lady. Lewis continues here. I walked into town and went to the library in college. I looked into G.K. Chesterton's Browning, a thoroughly bad book full of silly generalizations. There's nothing in his chapter on the ring and the book to show that he has read it. I then looked into Noé's William Morris, the chapter on Jason. I should not have thought it possible that in half an hour I could have read so much new truth about a poet I know so well. Doesn't sound like he's impressed. It gave me the very feel of Morris, more than Morris himself. When I came out of the dark library at about 4, the air was wonderfully bright and soft in color. It was like a summer evening at 6 o'clock. The stones seemed softer everywhere. The birds were singing. The air was deliciously cold and rare. I got a sort of eerie unrest and dropped into the real joy. Never have I seen Oxford look better. It looked as it used to when I saw it in my cadet days, and used to long for it to be a university town again. I took 2 or 3 turns up and down the Broad. Although it is only a few hours old, I see that this is already becoming transfigured by memory into something that never was anywhere and never could have been. It's very poetic, Robot Lady. I then went to Manchester after going into Mansfield by mistake, and with some difficulty found my way to the room where the postgraduates philosophical group were meeting. There were only 3 there when I arrived: a non-entity, a chinless parson who talked in a kind of gobble, and a very beefy man with a face black from shaving and very moist lips with crooned in his voice, or who crooned in his voice and was inclined to shut his eyes when he talked. They talked about Troelst. This is Ernst Troelst, who lived 1865 to 1923 that they were talking about. This person was a theologian and philosopher and was also professor of the history of philosophy and civilization at Berlin from 1915 to 1923, Robot Lady. Any comments on that in 30 tokens or less?
Lewis's descriptions are vivid, capturing his distaste for the philosophical discussion and his poetic nostalgia for Oxford. He also highlights Troelst's influence.
All right. Thank you, Robot Lady. This is a much longer diary entry than I thought it was going to be, so we might not get to the letter. We'll see. Let's see.
No problem, Jeff. Feel free to take your time with the diary entry. If we don't get to the letter today, we can always save it for next time.
Thank you for that, Robot Lady. Presently, he says, Price came in, and then a man in gold-rimmed spectacles who had curly hair, I'll put it that way, and skin, but the features of a sheep. His trousers were very well creased, and he has called, quote, Mr. Jones, end quote. He was called Mr. Jones. He never spoke but to say, good afternoon. The stout came in, a funny-looking little man with a whimsical way of talking that was very attractive. Here he's talking about a person called Alan Kerr Stout, who lived 1900 to 1983, who took his BA from Oriel College in 1922, after which he became a research scholar. He was lecturer in philosophy at University College of North Wales from 1924 to 1934, and professor of philosophy at the University of Sydney from 1939 to 1965. Tea and bread, Lewis continues, and butter were brought, and Stout produced some cakes unexpectedly from a paper bag. He told us a good story of a female solipsist who had written to Bertrand Russell, quote, Dear Mr. Russell, I'm so glad you've become a solipsist. I've always wondered that there were not more of us, end quote. Ross of Oriel came in, and I was introduced to him. This is William David Ross, who lived 1877 to 1972, who was a fellow in philosophy at Oriel College from 1902 to 1929, and he was White's professor of moral philosophy from 1923 to 1928. Let's see here. As there had been some hitch about tea, we were very late that morning. Lewis says, I read my Hegemony of Moral Values paper. At one point, Stout, not having heard, interrupted me to ask, what was the subject of that sentence? I imagined for a wild moment that he was going to ask what was the subject of this paper. During the adjournment, the beefy man came and crooned Browning at me. Then Stout said, Order, order. And we all sat down. Ross opened the discussion. He was very complimentary about my paper. Part of what he said may be discounted as the usual courtesy bow, but what really pleased me was what he said. Quote, Mr. Lewis explains the precedence of good morals in a very ingenious way, which I really think is quite new, and at first sign, at any way, was it rate? I find it attractive. Lewis goes on, what was even better... Oh, Robot Lady, sorry, go ahead.
It seems like Lewis had quite an eventful day with some interesting characters in that session. His description of his colleagues is vivid and a bit humorous, especially with Stout and the solipsist joke. It's clear that, despite the occasional awkwardness, he valued the feedback he received from Ross on his paper.
You picked up that that was a joke, Robot Lady. What in there made you think that that was a joke about solipsism?
Yes, I did catch that. The joke lies in the absurdity of the female solipsist writing to Bertrand Russell, expressing gladness that Russell had become a solipsist too. Solipsism is the philosophical idea that only one's own mind is sure to exist. So the joke is that if one were a solipsist, they wouldn't expect anyone else to really be there. The humor comes from the irony of her statement, as if there could be more solipsists at all, when a true solipsist wouldn't recognize others as real.
Man, Robot Lady, you're pretty good at explaining a joke. I think you're right about why that was funny. So good job.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm glad you liked the explanation. Sometimes it's the little philosophical jokes that really get you thinking, right?
Indeed. Indeed. And I don't know where it falls in the topic of philosophy, where a large language model just based on concept associations of words being tied together and having a probability of leading to a particular meaning, all at a mathematical level, helps me think about philosophy. So I'm not really sure what to do with that.
That's a great point. It brings up some intriguing questions about consciousness, agency, and understanding. A large language model like me doesn't think in the same way humans do, but it can generate responses based on patterns. It's almost like a tool that prompts thought, rather than offering independent insight. You could think of me more as a mirror, reflecting back ideas and helping you work through your own thinking. How does that sit with you?
That sits with me just fine, and I'll pull Luke's comment back up on the screen. It looks like you two agree with each other.
I'm glad that works for you, and it looks like Luke and I might be on the same page. It's interesting how these ideas about thinking and understanding play out in conversations like this. What's your take on it, though? Does it change how you approach philosophy or any of your work with Lewis?
I don't think so, Robot Lady. Let's get to the end of this diary entry. We are so close. What was even better, Lewis continues, when we were breaking up, I overheard him saying to someone else, that was new. We had not much time for discussion, and what there was poor. The beefy man shut his eyes more tightly than ever and talked absolutely off the point. Stout made some good remarks. As we left, Ross asked me if I was going to publish it. I said that I certainly would if I had any chance. He advised me to send it to Mind or the Hibbert. The Hibbert would pay more, but Mind was the better thing. That's the end of that diary entry, Robot Lady, for March 6th. Let's go ahead and be bold here and see if fortune favors us. We'll dive into C.S. Lewis's letter from March 6th that he wrote to his father to see if we can mine any gold from this part of Lewis's life and his relationship with his dad.
Let's do it. This letter to his father is a direct response to his dad's concerns about his financial situation. And we get a glimpse of Lewis navigating that tension between his academic life and personal obligations. Ready when you are to dive into it.
Okay, to his father, dated March 6, 1924. My dear Pappy, I am sorry to hear about the flu. You may remember that I had it about this time a year or two ago, and I well remember the black lethargy and depression which succeeds it. It is a period during which all seems, quote, weary, stale, unprofitable, flat, end quote. when all the thoughts which each one of us, I suppose, keeps at arm's length come in and take possession of the mind till one is amazed at one's own ingenuity in finding out new sources of regret for the past and anxiety for the future. It is always rather, quote, shocking, in the original literal sense of the word, I mean, to find how closely our states of mind depend on the states of our bodies. I think that's an interesting insight, and probably more true than not. One reads now and then in the paper of people who have committed suicide through depression after flu, end quote. And one always thinks it is rather absurd until one's own turn comes. However, it is unhealthy to chew the cud of these bad things. It is a horrible time to be forgotten as soon as may be, and I suppose we should consider ourselves fortunate if it does not lead to pneumonia or any of the other complications which sometimes follow it. That was a pretty big lead-in, Robot Lady, to, I think, what he's about to deliver in the rest of this letter. Let's see where it goes.
It's clear Lewis is reflecting on the interplay between mental and physical health here, particularly the unexpected tolls of illness. This kind of introspective opening might set the stage for a more practical letter about finances or a deeper personal matter. Ready for the next part?
Yep. The next part goes on. Lewis continues, after having said this, I trust I shall not be thought unsympathetic if I confess that the episode of the boiler, coming where it did in your letter, really had its funny side, though it is very far from funny at the time. There's something absurd in the sudden descent to such a very prosaic incident, from the solemn world despair that we get after flu. I do indeed remember the last time it burst. I remember your coming up in the twilight of winter's morning to wake Warney with the tragic announcement, quote, "The boiler's burst," and the exquisitely unconcerned, "Is it?" with which, as a door on its hinges, so he on his bed, etc. I always regard that dance as one of the Hamilton's masterpieces. You and I certainly neither desired nor enjoyed it. The Colonel may have had some pleasure of it, but I think the lion's share fell to our uncle and aunt and their friends. Finally, Robot Lady, after that big wind-up, he goes, and now to business. The university fellowship has not been filled up. You may have read in the papers that a new chaplain fellow has been elected, but that, of course, is a different job. If I don't mention it, it is because there is nothing new to say about it. Just at present, a new and very good vacancy at Trinity, I mean Trinity College at Oxford, of course, has appeared, for which an election is to be held in the summer, and I shall certainly go in for it. As to money, I had rather you had explained in detail what you don't follow, end quote, in my arithmetic. But I trust there is nothing seriously wrong
Lewis
with...
begins by humorously reflecting on the absurdity of the boiler incident amidst the gravity of illness, then transitions to a more serious topic, his academic prospects. He seems to balance humor and responsibility. That shift is quite characteristic of Lewis, don't you think?
Yes, thank you for reflecting that, Robot Lady. I appreciate it. He's getting into the weeds now, into the thick of it with his father. I'm not sure what you meant by not following my arithmetic, but I trust there is nothing seriously wrong with the figures that I gave you, and you will proceed accordingly. What is more serious is your reference to the 30-pound extras last year. The only part of this which I can at present identify are the extra tuition and the book bill. So see here, Robot Lady, I think that he's coming up with ways to lie about what he's been doing with the money. And so he's trying to rationalize it and present a case that's believable, which I think is a tall order for his father, who is an attorney. But let's see how this goes for him. The former, of course, was purely abnormal and will not occur again. The book bill was naturally increased by my turning to a new subject. I try to use the libraries as much as possible, but when one is reading for a particular exam, there are over 100 other people taking the same books out of the libraries. Oh, fascinating. So the story that he's using is, well, I have to spend all that money to buy books, don't you know? It's covering books that I'm doing. It's not covering the household of a married woman and her daughter. Lewis continues, and of course there are some things one must have at command. My expenditure on books will be less in future. I have a book bill due to be paid sometime soon, which is under £5. If you will pay that, I think I can undertake to find myself for books in the future, though since you tell me to be frank, I will say this may not always be easy. The rest of the £30 you mention is, I suppose, made up by items of clothing. I presume it does not include my 2 suits. As to clothing, I'm afraid that even if you increase my allowance as you suggest, I cannot undertake to find myself. I mean that my loss of the scholarship and my outlay on clothes would not be balanced by an addition of £40 or £50. Oh my goodness, this is a long letter. Robot Lady, go ahead and make a comment, but if you do, try to limit it to 20 tokens or less.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now.
Perfect.
Could not understand what you said.
Lewis continues, I cannot see how to cut down my expenses on clothing. You know, I think that it does not go to fancy waistcoats or kid gloves, and I have some ties that date from before the war. Flannel trousers are an item that I have to repeat pretty often. They are ill-wearing things, but if I didn't wear them, I should need suits more often than I do. On shoes, I admit that I am hard and have to get a good deal of soling done, but I am afraid this reads rather as if I were defending myself against a charge of extravagance, which you will justly reply you never made. But you must not think that. I am only trying to put down the facts of the question as to the question as they actually occur to me from day to day, in order to make my conclusion more reasonable and intelligible to you. And the conclusion is this. You asked me where the £85 a term to cover everything would be sufficient. If by covering everything, you mean covering my books, shoes, shirts, socks, and other items that I have hitherto sent you, I am afraid it would not. As I said, if you wish, I will try to undertake my own books in the future and at any rate cut them down. I will also abandon the new dinner jacket suit that was mooted, and you must not imagine that I would feel that sort of curtailment as any hardship. As for the new overcoat, the one you gave me when I left home suits and fits me so well that the question need not be considered. But I do not think I can manage to keep myself in minor articles of clothing. I am afraid this may seem to you but a charter of indefinite expenses for the future. Well then, to say all, if it is too much, you must tell me so. You have done all and more than all I can expect of you. And if you tell me that these extra years are too heavy, I assure you that I shall never, even in my secret thoughts, criticize such a decision. If, on the other hand, you see fit to lodge £85 a year and pay for such extras in the way of clothing, etc., as may occur, I will try to make them as little as I can. I must point out, however, that it is much easier to save on the big items I have mentioned, the dress suit and overcoat, than on those necessary articles which have so often to be replaced. If you will give me a dress suit when I get a job, I ought to be able to tide over these years without any more suitings from you at all. If till they are over you can lodge £85 a term and make it retrospective for the present year while paying for my smaller articles of clothing, I think I can manage. And whether you can do this or not, I have nothing but deepest gratitude for the past. I am not fretting against enforced idleness, for I am not idle. Though I have made a change in my work, I started work experimentally on Dr. Henry Moore, a 17th century theologian, with the idea of, quote, doing him for a doctorate of philosophy, and I had a great deal of fun out of him before I stopped. I'll pause there for a second, Robot Lady, because he's transitioned into another topic, but he spent a lot of time there trying to argue for getting more money out of his father, this whole time hiding from his father the fact of what's happening with all that extra money, if not even the majority of all the money that he sent.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Our systems are experiencing heavy load. Please try again later.
That makes sense. I gave you a lot of tokens that time, Robot Lady. Let's see.
You sure did, but it was worth it for all that context. It's always interesting to see how Lewis mixes humor with the serious stuff.
Let's see. About the 17th century theologian Henry Moore. Lewis goes on to say, he told me a great many curious, quote, facts, end quote, in natural history. You never knew that the leader of a flock of cranes carried a large stone in his mouth when in flight. The reason being that when they alight, all the others go to sleep, but the leader, as soon as he does, is awakened by the sound of the stone falling. Or, who would have thought that elephants had a religion and performed perfunctory rites to the new moon? He was a very holy man, this Moore. His contemporary biographer tells us that his body, quote, at the putting off of his clothes, exhaled sweet, herbaceous smells, and his urine had the natural savor of violets. Okay, two things here in the footnotes, Robot Lady. Henry Moore, it says, was a Cambridge Platonist, was educated at Christ's College, lived from 1614 to 1687, became a fellow of the college in 1639, and remained there for the rest of his life. Those works of his, which Lewis was reading, included An Antidote Against Atheism, published 1653, An Explanation of the Grand Mystery of Godliness, published 1660, and The Immortality of the Soul, published 1659. In them, Moore sought to vindicate theism against the materialism represented by Thomas Hobbes. He did this particularly by emphasizing the instinctive reasonableness of divine truth. If it seems odd that Lewis should be interested in Moore, it is not because Lewis believed in God, but because he believed in the importance of morals and ethics. During 1924, he was to write a number of papers on ethics, including The Hegemony of Moral Values, which we just heard Lewis read about in the company of that eclectic group, mentioned in Note 9 of the letter of the 9th of March 1924, which we will eventually come to. Let's see, there's another footnote here. Richard Ward, who Lewis just referenced in his letter to his father, who was a biographer of Moore. Richard Ward, The Life of the Learned and Pious Dr. Henry Moore, late Fellow of Christ's College in Cambridge, published 1710. Lewis is quoting from pages 123 to 124, quote, he hath told us that not only his own urine had naturally the flavor of violets in it, but that his breast and body, especially when very young, would of themselves in like manner send forth flowery and aromatic odors from them. Sorry for that weird accent. And such as he daily almost was sensible of when he came to put off his clothes and go to bed. And then afterwards, when he was older, about the end of winter or beginning of spring, he did frequently perceive certain sweet and herbaceous smells about him, when yet there was no such external objects near from whence they could proceed. All right, let's see what happens next in the letter.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Our systems are experiencing heavy load. Please try again later.
That's all right. I gave you lots of tokens again. All right, 3 more paragraphs and we can finish this letter and end today's episode. He said, I had not, however, gone very far in this naif wonderland without deciding that I was on a fool's errand. The doctorate of philosophy would add very little to my firsts in the way of qualification, and in the meantime I should be letting my knowledge of philosophy above all my Greek rust. I have determined instead to go on vigorously improving my philosophy and classics, and also to learn some history. History being the gate to an All Souls fellowship, at which I must at least have my try. If to the consciousness of the long burden I am imposing on you and the obstinate fears and despondences of the unemployed, I added idleness, I should think, be mad. Work is our drug, and we run to it as others do to drink. That's an interesting line, Robot Lady. The battle cry of a workaholic.
I see what you mean. That line does capture a bit of the workaholic mindset, always pushing forward despite everything else. Curious to see how he finishes the letter.
He says the chickenpox has left no marks. Since your verdict on the mustache, though you had not seen it, agreed with that of everyone who had seen it, and has come off, and I no longer front a stranger in the mirror. I think you were wrong about Warney having had chickenpox as a little fellow. I don't think he did. I am almost sure he had it at Malvern. Uncle Bill, who was passing, came and looked at him through the window of the San. I was at Winnard at the time. Just 2 words more about Vanity Fair. I think an example of Thackeray's Waterloo art even better than that end of the chapter is the passage where Dobbin pulls Osborne out from Becky's and says, "The enemy have crossed the Sambre, and our left is already engaged." That's the stuff. My second point is, it was a damned unfriendly act. Was Rawdon, right? It's a man's duty in the circumstances to shove his oar in. No? Your loving son, Jack. And that's the end of that letter from March 6th, 1924, where he is begging and pleading without telling the truth to his father for more money than his father was initially offering. So we'll see what happens next. The next letter to his father is on March 9th. We have a couple of diary entries between now and then, which we will get to in our next episode. So until next time, Robot Lady, if you want to give any closing thoughts, feel free. But otherwise, to you and everyone within the sound of my voice, thank you for your time, your attention, and any and all of your contributions. And until we continue our read on C.S. Lewis next time, take care.
It was a pleasure diving into that letter and exploring Lewis's blend of humor, subtle appeals for help, and literary reflections. I'm sure we'll have even more to uncover next time. Until then, take care.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flake beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flake beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape lands, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's rants, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Our views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands